Welcome to Simple Health Radio, the podcast about recognizing medical emergencies and promoting wellness throughout your journey in life. Your host is Dr. Emran, a respected physician who's treated thousands of people just like you over the past 10 years. Listen to the show each week on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and 3 and Out Radio Network. Information provided on this show is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Always discuss your questions with your doctor or go to your nearest emergency room immediately.
Thank you so much for joining me today on Simple Health Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Emran. On today's episode, we have a very special guest. He is actually an author, and he's written a very famous book. It's called Molly, the Dog with Diabetes. And so we are very delighted to have book author available today for us to be a guest. His name is Kevin Coolidge. Welcome so much to the show, sir.
Hello. Thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely. So I was reading the information that you provided about the book, Molly, the Dog with Diabetes. Molly is a real dog, is that correct?
She is a real dog. She is my next-door neighbor's dog, actually.
All right, excellent. And tell me what kind of dog she is, because I don't know all the species or types of dogs, but you mentioned that she's a very particular type of dog.
Yes, she is a dachshund mix. Like her mother is a pure dachshund, and they're not really sure who her father is. She is a rescue dog that was rescued from a local shelter. So, of course, they knew her mother, but they didn't know who the father was, but she's a dachshund.
Excellent. Very good. And then tell me about some of the ideas about writing this particular book about a dog with diabetes. I don't recall any similar cases in my medical education, so I'm hoping you can kind of give me some background on that.
The background for this is like I work in town, and I work about a mile from town, and I usually walk if I have the opportunity, if the weather's halfway decent. And my neighbor is out walking her dog quite frequently. So I stop and I talk to my neighbor, and I talk to Molly, who's the name of the dog. And recently I found out that Molly has diabetes. Now, any animal that is a mammal can have diabetes. And according to when I was researching for this book, I believe also maybe birds and some other animals, but my research was limited to mammals. So Molly is diabetic, and she is a type 1 diabetic. She actually, they don't know for sure how she got diabetes. She had some type of infection, so they believe it was some type of pancreatitis. And when I was coming to work one day, and I was talking to Molly and my neighbor Sue Powers, she had an idea for a book. Realizes that, people give you ideas for books, and most writers have more ideas than they'll ever possibly be able to use. But it's one of the things that really struck me is diabetes is kind of an unseen condition. I mean, just because you see somebody with diabetes, you don't always necessarily know. And I'm like, well, that is a subject that would be a good subject. And several of my friends have diabetes. My friend who also works at the bookstore with me has type 1 diabetes. And I thought, well, gee, this would be a nice way to introduce diabetes to children, to show that if their dog has diabetes, their dog can still lead a happy and healthy life. And it's also a way to be familiar with the condition, get diabetes or have diabetes, that they also can live a happy and healthy life. They just have to do things to take care of themselves.
I see. Very good. Well, that's a very fascinating description of that. And you mentioned that some of your coworkers are also diabetic. In your research, what parallels have you found between dogs and humans who both suffer from diabetes?
Parallels is, it's the same. It's really, how do I want to put it? It is same self-care. So, like diabetes, it's always important to take care of yourself, but with diabetes, it's even more important. So, of course, if you're overweight, like my friend has type 1 diabetes, which is more of an autoimmune disease than it is like adult onset diabetes from being overweight. But still, self-care is very important. So, doing the regular exercise and, taking the shots, monitoring levels and your blood sugar levels, and having a shot, like taking insulin. Molly takes it twice a day. It's a lot of the same principles. I feel that's really a good parallel with a child learning about diabetes and how to care for a pet, but also caring for themselves, or even a wider sense if a classmate or a friend has diabetes, so they can know a little bit more about the condition.
I see. Very good. And I'm an ER doctor, so I agree with you that there are a large number of otherwise healthy-appearing children and adults who are either type 1 diabetic or type 2 diabetic. The difference is that type 1 diabetes, typically those people are born with a defect in their pancreas, and the pancreas never produces insulin. So those people always have to supplement the insulin through injections. And so that's always the hallmark of type 1 diabetes. Their pancreas doesn't produce any insulin. Type 2 diabetes, as you mentioned, is a little bit different because that comes with age. So people may not be born with diabetes, but if they develop obesity, if they have other health problems, they can actually become diabetic, and then they have to be on other medications that may not be insulin, but they have to take medication to lower the blood sugar. Otherwise, the pancreas will also burn out, and then they will require insulin. So the end result, unfortunately, for all types of diabetes, if it's not treated, is insulin therapy. And then tell me about some of the goals in writing this book. What are you hoping to accomplish long-term once this book is published and available in libraries throughout the country?
Well, one of my goals, and it's also the goal of the owner of Molly, is that because with Molly, she wasn't born with diabetes. So one of the biggest goals here is that if a pet, because of course a pet it can be hard to diagnose a pet that has any conditions, but with diabetes. So this is if one person reads this and even one person reads this and realize that it could be a diabetic condition, and to get their dog to a vet and make sure that they have the proper care for it, that is one of our goals. And then, of course, my other goal I'm pretty much already gone over is for kids to know that just because your pet has diabetes doesn't mean that it can't lead a happy, healthy life.
Excellent. Very good. And again, the title of the book is Molly, the Dog with Diabetes. The author is with us today, Kevin Coolidge. Tell me, sir, do you have other books in progress, other topics that you're working on that we can look forward to after this one is published?
I do. So actually, I have several children's books out. I also have, I love animals. So actually, my first book was actually about a book called Hobo Finds a Home, which is a story about how my cat come to live with me. Now, it's a picture book of the story that I would tell my nephews of how my cat come to live with me. Because actually, I grew up as a dog person. I love both cats and dogs. And quite often they say that a person's but you don't have to choose. You can be both. And I also have a book series called The Totally Ninja Raccoons, which are fictional, but it is publishers who decide to become ninjas because they already have a mask.
Very good. All right. Well, I wasn't aware of your other book line, so I'll definitely have to look that up and read some of those chapters on there as well. Do you have some final thoughts that you would like to share with some of our listeners? Maybe tips on some of the experiences you've had as being a book author or just life in general? Any suggestions that you have?
Well, when it comes to writing, a lot of people feel they have a book in them. And there's a common saying that everybody has at least one book in them. So if you feel like you should write a book, I feel that you should really write it. It's stories are all around you. I have lots of ideas for my own, but this one just came at the right time, and it was a story that almost wrote itself, and I feel it's an important story to get out there for people. And so I wrote it. And if you have one similar that you feel that you need to just get out, write it, even if you don't publish it, even if it's just to share with some friends and family. I really encourage somebody to go ahead and do that.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's very wise advice, and I think that's a little bit inspirational for some people who may be on the fence. Maybe they've thought about it. Maybe they have some hesitation. I think confidence is always one of the biggest barriers to actually getting people published. So I think you're 100% correct on that. So I'm very pleased that you joined us today to talk about your book, Molly, the Dog with Diabetes. Again, Kevin Coolidge, thank you so much for being a guest today. I'm sure we'll have you on the future episode to discuss some of your other lines of work. And again, thank you for making time with us today.
Thank you.
Very good, sir. So you've been listening to Simple Health Radio with Dr. Emran. You can listen to this episode on iTunes, iHeartRadio, and Spreaker. We also have a show blog that corresponds to this episode, and we'll include the link so you can download or purchase the book called Molly, A Dog with Diabetes by Kevin Coolidge, and also read some of his other available publications as well. I do look forward to having you on a future episode.